Elon Musk, he's a figure of just immense, almost dizzying contradiction, right? I mean, is his chaotic public personality a sign of a really damaged psyche, or is it all part of some dominant, calculated strategy to build the future? Well, that's the enigma we're going to try and unravel today.
You know, psychiatrist Dr. Russell Rozika puts it perfectly. He asks, is he a genius or an idiot? An angel or is he a demon? And that's not just some dramatic question. It really gets to the very heart of why Musk is so polarizing. You've probably seen it yourself, right? People look at the exact same tweet or the exact same business move and come to totally opposite conclusions about who he is and what his impact on the world really is.
And that really brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. Is his famously erratic behavior, the impulsive posts, the public fights, that aggressive management style, is it a symptom of some deep, unresolved trauma from his past, or is it something else entirely, a calculated, high-functioning strategy for success? We're going to look at both of these powerful psychological lenses.
Okay, so let's start with the first perspective. This lens sees Elon Musk not as some master strategist, but as a product of trauma, a personality basically forged in the fire of a deeply difficult and painful past. The foundation for this whole theory really starts with his childhood. He grew up in apartheid South Africa, which was a culture built on this brutal idea of kicking downwards. Then at school, he was the victim of extreme bullying. He was once beaten so badly, he actually ended up in the hospital. But the trauma didn't stop there. When he got home, instead of getting any comfort, his own father just berated him for an hour, called him stupid, and actually sided with the bullies. Think about that. This wasn't just one bad day, it was a constant environment of hostility. So what does that kind of relentless, multi-layered trauma do to a person's psyche? Well, psychology actually has a term for it: internalizing the bully. It's this phenomenon where a victim of constant bullying, from your peers and even from your parents, starts to unconsciously take on the behaviors of their tormentors. It's a really brutal survival mechanism that, according to this theory, he just never outgrew. And you can see the alleged consequences of this pop up in a few ways. A lot of former employees have reported a really aggressive, almost bullying leadership style. His worldview seems to have been shaped by his family's Emerald Mine, a business that reportedly operated with just cruelty and a disregard for human rights. This framework also suggests it creates this weird attraction to power, making him gravitate towards other bullies in this kind of hierarchy of dominance. And maybe the most crucial piece of evidence here comes from Musk's own words. He has actually said, the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. Now, the trauma lens interprets this not as some grand strategic thought, but as a deep, personal lack of empathy for individuals, a direct scar from a childhood where empathy was not only missing, but was basically punished.
But what if that whole interpretation is completely wrong? Let's switch gears and look through our second lens, which shows a radically different picture. This theory suggests that what we're seeing isn't damage at all, but a deliberate design for success, something we're going to call the dominance code.
So this perspective argues that Musk is operating on what's called a social dominant script. You can think of it as a psychological code or an operating system that sees the world as a tough, competitive hierarchy. And, crucially, it rejects social harmony and that very human need to fit in. It sees all that stuff as a weakness that actually gets in the way of progress and innovation.
Think of it like this. Most of us are driven by what's called normative influence, that deep-seated urge to just fit in and follow the rules. But the dominance code, it champions something called divergent thinking. It's a mindset that's constantly exploring tons of different solutions, totally ignoring the social scripts that tell you, hey, you can't do that. And this theory argues that Musk didn't just stumble into this way of thinking. He has intentionally built it to create his empires.
And this framework completely reinterprets his behavior. That internal chaos we see, that's just his mind's producer faction winning out over the people-pleaser faction. The fact that he's messy in public but hyper-organized with engineering, that's just selective organization, a sign of mental efficiency. And all that intense public criticism, he doesn't see it as a personal attack, but as a signal for growth, a trait we call hardiness.
Okay, so we have two powerful competing theories here. One sees a man haunted by his past, and the other sees a man running a sophisticated mental program. Let's bring them into a direct collision and see exactly where they clash.
This is really where it all comes to a head. His so-called bullying behavior, the trauma lens sees it as a tragic repeat of his own abuse. But the dominance code, it sees it as a strategic tool. His view on empathy, one theory calls it a psychological scar, the other calls it a liability holding back progress. And this leads to the ultimate contrast. Is this whole approach a bug that could actually doom humanity, or is it a feature that drives progress through sheer unruly innovation? So, which theory holds up? Well, that's really for you to decide, but the dominance code theory gives us more than just a way to analyze Musk. It offers a practical tool for any of us who feel trapped by social pressure and that fear of what other people think. It's called the mind code test, and it's pretty straightforward. First, you isolate a thought of social fear, like, what are they going to think of me? Then you ask the test question. If I let myself think this for 24 hours, what behavior would it lead to? And finally, you evaluate that outcome. If that thought leads to a timid, stagnant version of yourself that you wouldn't admire, the instruction is simple. Drop the thought immediately. It's a tool to stop being the guardian of your own limitations.
And that leaves us with this final massive question. Is humanity's future best secured by the empathy that binds us together, the very thing Darwin argued was key to our evolution? Or is it secured by the unruly genius, the one who ignores the rules and maybe the feelings of others in order to build that future for us? Damaged psyche or dominant strategy? The answer might define more than just one man. It might just define our path forward.